So let's talk about now what I am proposing to optimize your current plan, and that is how do we be more intelligent with AI. And at the moment, we're doing a lot of really clever things, but on a tech stack, but it's a lot of filing. Um, Folk CRM, for example, is brilliant, but it's a CRM, it's a storage. Um, I think what I would think about is how do we do more thinking rather than clicking um, a lot and copying and pasting a lot. So the proposition I have here is intelligence versus automation. Um, and the shift really is if we think about your current tools and how we could use them to better judge your actual prospects that are coming into your CRM. That's kind of what I mean when I'm talking about intelligence with AI. Um, so let's say Mark, for example, is copying a name from LinkedIn into the CRM or somewhere else. We could get AI to do this. So if you use Open AI, just connect to their API, you could then define an analyst role, and that would essentially read these prospects' bios for you and then maybe give it a specific relevance score between 1 to 10. So Mark is then speaking to tens or nines or eights rather than ones and twos, right? And that's done um, autonomously for you. Um, the second thing is you've got lots of templates that you're looking to send, which can come across spammy. If you've ever used Claude 3.5 Sonnet, you know that it's really good at writing more naturally in a human way. Um, I would set this up so that you can then basically take that prospect, their About Us section, and then you could actually draft up some really unique things to talk about for that prospect. So then, when the message is sent, the email is sent, it's actually going to look like it's thoughtful and handwritten and not spam, right? And it also removes the grunt work for Mark writing these individually. Um, and on the grunt work piece, that's kind of the next one to think about is we can reduce the number of hours that Mark is doing a lot of this manual work, and then it can be more about, focusing on the final stages of the pipeline and closing the deals. Um, and I mentioned earlier, like if you set up Appify, you can have that as your watchdog. So that can actually look at Glassdoor, can find all the companies at 3.2 rating, and then send those across to Mark to review. Or you can have an AI review them and even take off that part of the process. But basically, that search process then be completely removed from that. Um, and then you've got the um, reply, you know, um, outcomes that you look at, and all of these vanity metrics, let's say, we call them, that we like to look at, open rates, that kind of thing. I would shift the thinking here a little bit. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hunter or Smart Lead. Um, it's really good at reading the incoming replies from a prospect and understanding the sentiment of that prospect. So then you automatically get the AI to then tag the sentiment as, yeah, their positive sentiment, follow up in the sequence, or it could be objectionable, like they're objecting about price. And then you'll actually have a dashboard that explains to you why leads are dropping off and the sentiment, and that's all marked um, automatically by the AI. Um, and then the final thing I wanted to talk about is um, we can move, I guess, Mark away from remembering to send emails and responses himself. to having more of a autopilot that's doing the remembering for him. So it could be like a content assistant that's, you know, reminding Mark to send a follow up to Joe about the fact that, you know, he's just read the news and there's, you know, a massive load of like staff that's leaving his company, and how are they dealing with that, you know, that kind of thing. So you can have like a content assistant that's watching the industry, watching the companies that you're interested in. When relevant news is interesting for your prospects, then it would remind Mark, and then obviously it can become more of a asset for Mark to be able to use to nurture these leads. So you know, bottom line again is, um, this is kind of more of a blueprint that I'm thinking that becomes more intelligent to your current system. And then the final thing I want to talk to you about is obviously the tech stack that you currently have and how we could build on top of it. Um, Folk obviously is your kind of core CRM. You're putting the data in there, which is fine. And then obviously you have email systems, which is, you know, doing a lot of the transporting of the data to your prospects. Um, the issue at the moment with just these systems is it's obviously not doing much thinking. It's waiting for Mark to do the manual side of it, clicking the button, setting it up, copying and pasting into it. So my stack is more about intelligence and upgrading what you currently do. So you obviously have make.com, which you've mentioned in your doc. This is kind of like the orchestration tool, because this is going to do, as you've said, you know, it's going to do a lot of the connecting of all the different apps and setting up the logic. And obviously it's 24/7, which is cool. Then you have all these clever AIs doing roles. So the AI analyst, which could be OpenAI, for example, that's doing all the reading of the bios, reading the LinkedIn profiles, it's assigning relevant scores, it's looking at your CRM, etc. It's telling Mark basically who to speak to, who not to speak to, and why. Then you've got Claude Point 3.5, which is the writer, because a lot of like when you put things into ChatGPT, for example, I don't think the writing comes back very authentic or very human-like, but then Claude is really good at writing, so it sounds a lot more like proper sentences, proper sounds like how a human would write something, not spammy, and it can identify a couple of interesting things to talk about. Then you've got the Apify, which is obviously your scraping tool. So that's going to go away, look in the background. It doesn't have to just be Glassdoor. It could be other sites, Google Places, for example, reviews. It can find out ratings below 3.2 and come back to you with the results automatically. Um, and then, you know, you've got other kind of add-ons, let's say. So if you want to be like nudged, like I said earlier, you could have an AI that actually reminds you to do things. So if there's like an event, if there's like some uh remember that I'm thinking of this person email that Mark needs to send, it will just be kind of like almost, let's say, doesn't have to call it a content strategist, it could be like a PA that is nudging Mark in the background to remind him to do things. So this is the stack. This is the blueprint. I'd love to work with you on this, and look forward to your feedback.